The desert night was silent, the kind that made every heartbeat echo like thunder. A lone figure stepped into the dim glow of a lantern, outside a weathered saloon. John Carter said, "This town don't forget, and neither do I." His boots crunched against the dust, each step heavier than the last. The air carried the sharp scent of gunpowder, lingering from a shot that had rung out seconds earlier. Somewhere in the darkness a scream had cut short, leaving only the wind. John Carter's eyes, shadowed beneath his hat, narrowed as he scanned the empty street. The sound of swinging saloon doors still echoed behind him, and he knew someone had drawn first blood. He whispered to himself, "Tonight, debts get paid." The lantern flickered, painting shadows that seemed to move with intent. Far off, a church bell tolled midnight, its cry slicing through the silence. The town lay still, but danger was alive in the shadows waiting. This was no chance encounter. It was the beginning of his last call. The street fell back into silence, but John Carter knew silence was its own kind of warning. He remembered the night he'd lost everything, a memory stitched into the desert air. The creak of old wood above the saloon reminded him of that gunshot years ago, the one that had taken his brother. He whispered, "This town hasn't changed." The wind rattled broken shutters, carrying with it whispers of betrayal. His eyes scanned the darkness, searching for shapes that weren't there, ghosts in the dust. The revolver at his side felt heavier with each passing second, as though it carried the weight of unfinished business. John Carter's jaw tightened, his past pressing against him like a noose. This wasn't just another night in a dying town. This was the start of reckoning, a storm no man could hide from. The saloon's windows glimmered faintly, though no music played, no laughter spilled into the street. John Carter said, "Dead places still whisper." His eyes tracked the edge of rooftops, where memories of ambushes still lived. The wind carried faint traces of smoke, not from cigars but from something older, like gunpowder lingering too long. He felt the sting of regret bite deeper than the cold night. Inside, he imagined shadows waiting, cards on tables abandoned mid-game. He whispered, "It's like they never left." His boots shifted slightly, dust scraping against wood planks beneath him. The night held its breath. He knew the desert could keep secrets, but tonight it would spill them all. From the corner of his eye, movement stirred. Not the shadow of a man, but something smaller, quicker, teasing his nerves. John Carter's hand twitched near his revolver, but he held steady. He said quietly, "Not yet." His heart beat hard, not from fear but anticipation, the kind of rhythm only a gunslinger knew. He thought of the men he'd buried, the debts unpaid, the women who still cursed his name. Every ghost felt near tonight. A tumbleweed brushed against his boot, breaking the spell, and the silence grew heavier still. He whispered, "Soon?" He knew the one he hunted would make the first mistake. The church bell's echo finally faded, leaving only the scrape of desert wind. John Carter said, "Midnight's call." He knew the hour marked more than time. It was a summons, a line drawn in dust and blood. His eyes locked on the darkened alley where danger waited. He thought of the graves behind him, of names carved into stone that still whispered in his dreams. His brother, his father, the family he'd failed. Tonight was not about vengeance alone. Tonight was about reckoning with every ghost that shadowed his steps. His revolver gleamed faintly in lantern light, a reminder that redemption and damnation both came from the barrel of a gun. John Carter's boots echoed through the hollow street as dawn's first gray light kissed the rooftops. He hadn't slept, nor could he. The desert air held the weight of memory and the promise of blood. The saloon doors creaked behind him, but no one dared follow. He muttered, "The town feels like a coffin." Dust swirled at his ankles, carrying whispers of his past. He remembered riding with friends who now lay cold in graves, marked by crooked stones. The silence was not emptiness but judgment. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, mocking the morning. His eyes traced the sheriff's office, where lies and law had always walked hand in hand. He whispered, "I'll find you." He wasn't just hunting a man, he was chasing ghosts, debts, and the hollow truth that redemption may never come. The morning promised answers, but it also promised blood. He pushed open the sheriff's door, wood groaning like bones. Inside, the air smelled of whiskey and dust, not justice. Papers scattered across the desk told no story of law, only of bribes and betrayals. John Carter whispered, "Figures." His hand traced a star-shaped badge nailed into the wall, tarnished and crooked. He remembered the man who once wore it, a friend turned stranger, a lawman turned shadow. He said, "You always did sell easy." The cell bars rattled in the wind, slipping through the cracks. This place was not a jail but a graveyard of honor. He felt the weight of eyes on him, unseen but heavy. The sheriff's chair rocked slowly, as if someone had just risen, but the room was empty. A shiver crawled down his spine. From behind him, a young voice broke the silence. Michael Reed said, "You shouldn't be here." John Carter turned, meeting the eyes of a boy too young for scars but already carrying them. The lad's hand trembled near the holster of a pistol too big for him. John Carter said, "You're green, son. This ain't your fight." Michael swallowed, defiance burning in his voice. "Nay," he said. "My fight started the day they killed my father." John Carter saw himself in the boy, a mirror of rage and broken youth. He muttered, "You'll get yourself buried." The boy didn't flinch. His presence was not an accident. Fate had thrown them together. The outlaw felt the sting of responsibility creep into his chest. The two stood in silence until the wind pushed harder through the cracks, rattling cell bars again. Michael's voice cracked as he said, "You're after him, aren't you?" John Carter's eyes darkened, and he muttered, "I'm after the truth." The boy's jaw clenched. He said, "Then we're the same." The words cut deeper than a bullet. John Carter knew youth could not survive in a world like this, yet he could not turn the boy away. He whispered, "You'll regret that." The young man didn't blink. The sheriff's chair creaked again, as though mocking them both. Somewhere beyond the door, boots scraped wood, and the sound of spurs echoed. The saloon across the street suddenly filled with sound, laughter too forced, glasses clinking too sharp. John Carter froze, and Michael's hand instinctively reached for his revolver. The outlaw whispered, "That's no celebration. That's bait." His eyes narrowed on the swinging doors, glowing faintly with morning light. He remembered the last ambush he'd walked into, and the graves that followed. Michael said, "Then we walk in anyway." John Carter shook his head, muttering, "Kid, you don't walk into a snake's den unless you're ready to get bit." Yet the weight of unfinished business pressed him forward. Together, outlaw and boy stepped toward the saloon, shadows stretching long on the dusty ground. The saloon doors swung open, their hinges crying out like wounded animals. John Carter stepped inside with Michael close behind, the air thick with smoke and stale whiskey. Laughter died down instantly as every eye turned to them. John Carter said, "Quiet, sure, sounds honest now." A card game paused mid-deal, hands hovering uncertainly. Men shifted in their seats, faces familiar from old wanted posters. Michael's eyes darted across the room, his hand never leaving his revolver. A piano in the corner stood silent, dust covering the keys. The outlaw's gaze locked on the far end of the bar, where a shadow leaned against polished wood, calm and waiting. The boy whispered, "That's him, isn't it?" John Carter's silence was answer enough. The man at the bar finally stepped forward, boots tapping steady against wooden planks. "Sheriff William Harlan said, 'Well, if it ain't the ghost come walkin'.'" John Carter's jaw tightened, but he didn't draw. He muttered, "Ghosts don't forget." Harlan's badge gleamed, polished but stained by reputation. Michael shifted nervously, whispering, "He's the law." John Carter growled, "He's worse." The saloon crowd leaned back, hungry for the storm about to break. The sheriff poured himself a drink with deliberate calm, savoring the moment. He said, "You were always trouble, Carter. Tonight, I finish what I shed years ago." John Carter's hand hovered near his revolver, his silence louder than any retort. Michael's breathing grew quick, his knuckles white on the revolver grip. He said, "We can take him now." John Carter shook his head, whispering, "Not yet, kid." Sheriff Harlan smirked, raising his glass before slamming it down hard. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot, startling the crowd. John Carter said, "You sold this town for silver and pride." Harlan chuckled darkly, "And you sold yours for blood." The room grew heavier, the silence pressing against every wall. The tension between them felt like dry tinder waiting for a spark. Michael muttered, "Then what are we waiting for?" Carter whispered, "For him to make the first mistake." Suddenly, a shot rang out from the shadows of the balcony above. Wood splintered near Carter's boot, sending Michael stumbling back. Carter yelled, "Sniper!" Chaos erupted as tables overturned and patrons dove for cover. John Carter dragged Michael behind a post, shielding him from the rain of bullets. Sheriff Harlan stood untouched, smirking as though orchestrating the entire ambush. He said, "You didn't think I'd fight fair, did you?" John Carter growled, "You never did." Gunfire thundered across the saloon. Lanterns shattered, throwing the room into flickering chaos. The outlaw's mind sharpened. This wasn't just survival, it was war. Carter returned fire, each shot precise, forcing the hidden gunman into retreat. Michael rose too soon, firing wildly, the recoil almost knocking him off his feet. John Carter snarled, "Keep your head down, boy." Sheriff Harlan shouted, "You brought this on yourself, Carter. This town's mine now." Carter's blood boiled at the words, but his focus remained sharp. He shot the lantern above, plunging half the saloon into darkness, buying them cover. Michael whispered, "We can't win this." Carter whispered back, "We ain't here to win. We're here to survive the night." The gunfight raged on, shadows and sparks filling the air. The gunfire slowed, leaving smoke to hang thick as fog. John Carter pushed Michael toward the back door, but his eyes remained fixed on Sheriff Harlan. From the shadows, a woman emerged, her steps deliberate, her presence electric. Evelyn Blackthorne said, "You never could let go, John." The outlaw froze, her voice cutting sharper than any bullet. He whispered, "Evelyn, I buried you years ago." Her gaze was cold, yet layered with sorrow. She said, "You buried a lie, John. I never died. I chose." The saloon erupted in whispers, men unsettled by the sight of a ghost from Carter's past. Michael's jaw dropped, his pistol lowering in disbelief. Evelyn's eyes shifted between Carter and Harlan, torn but unreadable. John Carter muttered, "All this time, you stood with him?" Her silence was answer enough. The room seemed to shrink as Carter stepped closer, his voice low and broken. "You let me grieve a ghost." Evelyn's lips trembled before hardening into a mask. She said, "I did what I had to. Harlan gave me a choice, his side or the grave." The sheriff raised his glass, mocking. "Turns out, loyalty buys better than love." Michael whispered, "She was with him all along." Carter's chest ached, but his rage held him steady. He muttered, "You were my compass, Evelyn. And you led me into hell." She flinched, but her eyes did not break. The saloon grew colder, as if the desert itself listened for her answer. She finally whispered, "And yet here we are, John, still bound, still bleeding, still alive." Michael's voice broke the silence. "You lied to him, to everyone." Evelyn's gaze softened on the boy, as if seeing innocence she'd lost. She whispered, "The truth is heavier than a bullet." John Carter's hand shook near his revolver, but not from fear. "You stood by while he buried my brother," he said. Evelyn's face hardened, yet her voice cracked. "I saved you from the same grave." Harlan stepped forward, voice dripping poison. "She saved herself, Carter. Don't fool yourself." The crowd in the saloon shifted uneasily, their thirst for blood now mixed with curiosity. Carter muttered, "You were my reason to crawl out of the dirt, and you sold that for his silver." Evelyn whispered, "I sold it for survival." Carter's mind flashed to the day his brother died, The moment he had blamed faceless men in the desert. But Evelyn's words carved a new wound. She whispered, "It was no outlaw. It was Harlan." He pulled the trigger. The sheriff laughed coldly, no denial in his eyes. He said he begged John, and I obliged. Carter's stomach turned to stone, his breathing shallow. Michael gripped his pistol tighter, anger boiling over. "He killed your blood, and you still serve him?" he shouted at Evelyn. She trembled, but did not move from Harlan's side. Carter whispered, "Then it ends tonight." His hand finally steadied on his revolver, the truth now his only guide. The saloon's silence shattered under the weight of the revelation. Carter's voice was steel. "You killed my blood, stole my compass, and claimed my town. You'll answer for all of it." Harlan's smirk widened, his arrogance dripping. "Answer with what, John? You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time." Michael raised his revolver, defiance burning. "Not outnumbered," he said, though his hand shook. Evelyn's eyes flickered with guilt, her breath shallow. For the first time her mask cracked. She whispered, "John." Her voice was plea and warning both. Carter took one step forward, each movement a vow. The storm had broken, and the reckoning had begun. The saloon erupted into chaos as men scrambled for cover. John Carter's voice cut through the noise like thunder. "Michael with me." The boy's hands trembled, but he moved, fire in his eyes. Sheriff Harlan barked orders to his men, his confidence unshaken. Evelyn stood frozen, torn between betrayal and salvation. Carter's revolver roared, the crack echoing against timber walls. He thought of his brother, of blood spilled in dust, and he swore this would be the last night his ghosts ruled him. Michael shouted, "They're circling us." Carter growled, "Then we circle back harder." The outlaws fired relentlessly, lantern light shattering, smoke thickening. Carter's soul carried the weight of every death he had seen, but tonight it pressed forward with clarity. His reckoning had begun. Carter shoved Michael behind an overturned table, splinters flying as bullets tore into wood. Michael gasped, "There's too many." Carter's voice was cold steel. "It ain't about how many. It's about how long you stand." His eyes locked on Harlan, the man who had stolen everything. The sheriff grinned, firing slowly, savoring the moment. Evelyn stepped closer to him, yet her eyes betrayed conflict. Carter's thoughts burned. She was the wound that never healed, and now she stood between him and vengeance. He whispered, "One truth left, the gun decides." Michael shouted, "They're closing in." Carter leaned forward, revolver ready, heart pounding with the weight of justice. The floor shook as bullets ripped through beams. Michael flinched, nearly dropping his weapon. Carter snarled, "Keep your hand steady, boy, or you're already dead." The young man swallowed fear, nodding. Harlan's laughter boomed across the room. "Look at you, Carter, hiding like a rat." Carter shouted back, "A rat still bites." He fired, striking one of Harlan's men, sending him crashing into the poker table. Evelyn gasped, her hand clutching her chest as though the violence tore through her too. Michael's resolve hardened, his voice rising. "We'll end this." Carter whispered low, "No, kid, I will." His heart carried fire older than the boy's rage. The smoke thickened, choking the air, the saloon turning into a battlefield of shadows and sparks. Carter's vision tunneled, every sound sharper, every heartbeat louder. Michael's shot finally struck true, dropping an outlaw where he stood. The boy's voice cracked, "I did it." Carter said, "Now do it again." Harlan fired back, his bullet grazing Carter's shoulder. Pain seared, but Carter stood firm, blood soaking his sleeve. Evelyn cried out, "Stop this madness," but neither man heard her plea. The weight of years pressed on Carter's chest, grief, rage, betrayal, all boiling into one moment. He muttered, "This ends with one of us buried." Harlan's smile answered. The gunfire slowed, bodies strewn across the saloon floor, silence broken only by labored breaths. Carter limped forward, revolver still aimed. Harlan stepped into the open, hands steady, eyes cold. "Just us now," the sheriff said. Michael tried to rise, but Carter raised his hand, warning. "This fight's mine, boy." Evelyn stood between them, trembling, tears streaking her face. "One of you will kill the other, and I'll still be damned," she whispered. Carter's voice cut like stone. "Step aside, Evelyn." Her body swayed, caught in torment, but her eyes met Carter's one last time. Harlan smirked, revolver twirling. The showdown had arrived, carved by fate and blood. The saloon air was thick with dust and smoke, the silence after chaos pressing harder than the gunfire. John Carter and Sheriff Harlan stood face to face, every scar between them carried into this moment. Michael whispered, "Let me fight." Carter's voice was calm, steel over fire. "This ain't your burden, boy." Evelyn's breath shook, her body trembling as if torn in two. Harlan's grin never wavered. "I buried your brother, Carter. I'll bury you too." Carter's revolver rose steady, his heart pounding like war drums. The world outside faded. No laughter, no wind, only the duel. He whispered, "Let's finish this." The room held its breath, waiting for the spa. Carter's finger hovered on the trigger, but his mind flashed to the graves, to the nights he cursed himself for surviving. Harlan tilted his head, taunting. "Still haunted? You always were the weaker one." Carter's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "Weakness is hiding behind badges and lies." The sheriff's grin turned sharp, his revolver twitching. Evelyn cried, "Stop this," but her plea broke against walls of rage. Michael shouted, "John, shoot him." Carter's breath steadied, every muscle honed for this instant. The saloon seemed to shrink, until only two men remained, bound by blood, betrayal, and fate. The sheriff struck first, revolver flashing with fire. Carter dodged, bullet grazing wood behind him. He fired back, sparks exploding as lead ripped through the sheriff's coat. The crowd that had lingered screamed and scattered, leaving only echoes. Michael rose, gun raised, but Carter barked, "Stay down." Harlan roared, "You'll die like your brother." Rage surged through Carter's veins, his hands steady, though blood dripped from his arm. Evelyn screamed, running forward but froze in place, torn. Carter's heart beat in rhythm with the shots, each one closer to the truth. He whispered, "Not tonight." Harlan staggered but steadied, hatred burning. He growled, "You should have stayed dead inside, Carter." He raised his revolver again, but Evelyn stepped between them. "Enough!" she cried, her voice cracking. Harlan's fury turned toward her. "Traitor, Dot." He fired, bullet grazing her arm as she collapsed to her knees. Carter roared, rage-breaking chains of restraint. His revolver barked twice, each shot carrying years of grief. Harlan stumbled, the badge on his chest shattering under the impact. His eyes widened, disbelief replacing arrogance. He whispered, "Not possible." He fell backward, crashing through shattered glass, silence swallowing his fall. Silence settled, broken only by Evelyn's ragged breathing and Michael's whispered prayers. Harlan lay still, lifeless, the sheriff's badge cracked beside him. Carter's revolver hung at his side, hand trembling for the first time. He whispered, "It's done." But victory felt hollow, his brother still gone, his heart still scarred. Michael rose, eyes blazing with awe and grief. "You beat him," he said. Carter shook his head. "No, I buried him." Evelyn looked up, tears streaking her face. "You buried us all." Carter's eyes met hers, pain etched deep. The desert outside was silent, but the storm inside him raged on. The saloon lay silent, its walls scarred by bullets and smoke, its floor littered with broken glass and lifeless men. John Carter stood in the wreckage, chest rising heavy, his revolver finally holstered. Michael stepped toward him, voice shaking. "We made it." Carter's eyes were distant, as though staring at ghosts only he could see. "Surviving ain't the same as living," he muttered. Evelyn leaned against a broken beam, blood staining her sleeve, her voice faint. "He's gone, John. The man who haunted you." Carter's jaw tightened. "The dead don't leave. They ride with you." The boy's eyes narrowed, hope mingled with fear. The outlaw knew the battle was won, but the war inside him had only just begun. Carter stepped outside, the morning sun breaking over the horizon, painting the desert gold. He squinted, breathing in the cool air that felt heavier than gunpowder. Michael followed, his face pale but eyes burning with new fire. "What now?" he asked. Carter's gaze swept across the empty street, where silence echoed louder than gunshots. "Now," he said slowly, "you decide what kind of man you'll be." Michael frowned. "And you?" Carter's lips pressed tight. "I'm a man with debts that never get paid." The boy looked down, but Carter's shadow stretched long across the dust, a reminder that some burdens never lift. Evelyn staggered out behind them, clutching her wound, her face pale but her eyes sharp. She whispered, "You'll never escape him, John. Even dead he'll follow you." Carter didn't turn, his voice low. "I don't aim to escape. I aim to endure." Evelyn's lips trembled, tears sliding silently. She said, "I chose wrong once. Don't let the boy do the same." Michael's jaw clenched, caught between admiration and fear of the man before him. Carter finally looked at Evelyn, the pain in his eyes sharper than any blade. "We all chose wrong, Evelyn, and we're still paying the price." She lowered her head, her silence carrying its own confession. The church bell tolled faintly in the distance, the sound carried by desert wind. Carter's eyes lifted toward it, memories of his brother's funeral hammering into his chest. Michael broke the silence. "You could stay. Build something here." Carter shook his head slowly. "This town don't need me. It needs men who still believe in tomorrow. I buried tomorrow years ago." Evelyn's voice quivered. "And where will you go?" Carter's eyes swept across the endless horizon, the weight of exile carved in his stare. "Wherever the dead still ride with me," he whispered. The boy's breath caught, realizing he was speaking not of places but of ghosts. John Carter adjusted his hat, shadow veiling the torment in his eyes. He turned from the boy and the woman, his boots crunching on dust that seemed to echo louder than before. Michael called, "John, what about me?" Carter paused, his voice gravel and sorrow. "Live, boy. That's the only fight worth winning." He didn't turn again. His figure shrank into the horizon, swallowed by the rising sun. Evelyn's tears glistened as she whispered, "The cowboy's last call." The town remained behind them, broken yet alive, while his silhouette disappeared into desert light. The silence that followed was heavier than death, lingering like a wound that never heals.